No amount of anxiety changes the future, and no amount of fear changes the past. But any amount of gratitude changes the present moment.
Oh, this is major. It's like the next big thing. Come catch the wave, yeah. Yeah, watch what's happening. A force of nature. Hit 'em like lightning. Be the creator of the next big thing. We're the movers and shakers. We are the dreamers, the makers. We stand on top of equators. We are the limitless. We got the future, no papers. We are the innovators. We have the focus like lasers. You know we doing it big. Oh, this is major.
Greetings and welcome to the Compromise to Alchemized podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Neil Bolchandani. In today's episode, or right now when you're hearing this, you're going to hear an interview with Rafael McMaster, who has this nonprofit called Indivisible Arts. We really get into it. We talk about a little bit on how he started it, although he goes into it on other podcasts. So definitely encourage, check his episode out with Unbeatable Minds, Mark Divine. That's actually where I heard of him through. And then I found out, oh, he's in Hermosa Beach and in Santa Barbara. That's, not too far away in LA. So actually on the way back from San Diego recently, I was planning to stop by and see him, and I just couldn't make it with traffic and my timeline. And I was going to watch the class that they do. And so really, it's so fun to see what Rafael has done. And his, one of his main missions is to raise up 1 million conscious youth. And we could say that, but the way he's doing it is really so inspiring. So many times while I heard his podcast with Mark Divine, and while we were talking, I just really can see how he understands kids, he understands youth, he understands people. And so one example of that is he talks about this term that's called mind watching. And it's not one he came up with. He facilitated it though. So the youth that he corrals and gathers that are part of the physical location in Hermosa Beach, they get together and they learn together, and they are learning consciousness, they're learning expression. And I'll talk more about that, but they came up with this term mind watching because they didn't really resonate with mindfulness or consciousness, so to speak, even though those are very important terms. So for me, I just get really excited that he so looks at what the children are saying and he learns from them, but he's also a great leader in what he does. In fact, the whole movement was initiated because he went to his daughter's school and he saw something that he could add, and through that, he started a nonprofit. So he's the creative director, artist, and the youth mental health advocate that is dedicated to empowering these youth through mindfulness and creativity. He was a former creative executive. I think it's 20 years he spent in that realm, in entertainment. But he shifted to founding this nonprofit called Indivisible Arts, and it equips youth with tools for emotional resilience and self-expression. I resonate with that so much. He blends mentorship, mindfulness, and the arts to support youth facing adversity. So again, we could use mind watching as a term. I think he likes to add that in as we're talking because he wants to get a sense for, he's not replacing that word, but the kids have spoken, right? So I like the word. I like the fact that he created this movement based on what he saw and what he sees inspire the youth. So he also wrote this book called FundaMentaLife Tools. Just 2025 saw its release. It's $12, so check out the show notes. I really want to grab that book and start a study group. I was thinking about in person, and I have that desire, but maybe I'll extend it beyond that to form a virtual group. Rafael wants to get involved with that, so it'll be fun. So it's a practical guide to emotional well-being, and it's based on his creative wisdom tools curriculum that's in the Indivisible Arts curriculum. So yeah, I'd love for you guys to listen, engage. Rafael's really inspiring, really creative. definitely a very inspiring person. And then also I'll touch on that again, that he really looks at, we talk a lot about the flame, lighting the flames of these kids, these people, right? This is not just for kids, this is for all ages. That's why I feel like these 7 tools or 7 aspects that he talks about, I think I want to read those for those, not only to help my kids, but I want that knowledge. I'm a kid who needs more help. And I feel like I've come a long way, but as we say, there's only more we can go and grow. So I love this conversation. He talks about this, but coming up down the pike, I'm going to go and spend some time there and collaborate on a project. So I'm really excited about that. So self-expression, expressive arts, consciousness, mindfulness, mind watching. We go into that and way more. So enjoy this conversation. I just used mind watching in a webinar that I presented at, and I just know you're going to come away. Just remembered my podcast publisher, Alyssa, reminded me, there's this part where Rafael shares, kind of deep into it, a story of loss that a student of his shared. So kind of disclaimer, although it's a really powerful story, that it's going to be potentially one that will pull on your heartstrings. And I was near tears, and I just didn't want to move on from that part, but it was a great story to help illustrate just the importance and the significance of forgiveness. So it's one of the 7 tools that he talks about, and it really just is a pretty wonderful time of talking with Rafael and exploring some of his thoughts and some of his work. So enjoy. I hope you enjoy all of this podcast and what it has for you, and also the music by Luna Lux. Love that. And come check out all of the things that we're doing here in 2026. Me and my team have a lot of things that are in the works, that are in the launch phase, and I'm really excited for all that's coming up.
We have to focus like lasers, you know we doing it big. Oh, this is major.
All right, Rafael, I'm so excited for this conversation today, and I'm stoked for what we'll talk about. And we've had a couple conversations leading up to this, so I think it's just going to be a deep dive, and I'm really thankful that you are taking time so we could delve into this.
Yeah, let's do it. Every time me and you talk, man, it's so electric right away. So I already tell we're gonna have an amazing conversation. Let's do this. Let's have some fun here.
Yeah, I gotta say, first of all, the context of heard you on the Mark Divine's podcast, Unbeatable Mind. I've listened to his podcast. It's just one of the top ones that I'll check to see, what's the latest that he's talking about. And he talks about mindfulness a lot, but I really love like how much the creative
Yeah.
feeds your consciousness talks, the way that I just love the way you talk, first of all. And then of course, your work with the youth in LA, and just how you take so much of your life and pack that into how can you usher in. Now I know you have like this mission of is it like 1 million
That's right. 1 million conscious youth.
conscious youth?
That's right,
I love
yeah.
that.
And
So-
conscious is defined as someone who is the aware observer of their thoughts,
Yeah.
trained, classically practicing, right? Different than intelligence,
Mhm.
and honestly, this idea of I am not my thoughts, I am the one having my thoughts,
Mhm.
that did not occur to me until it was laid at my feet when I was 35 years old. Right. And so, the more I have conversations with others, the general consensus is that maybe only 15 to 25% of people know this or understand this. So there's a good chance that, some of your listeners that are listening right now haven't really had the opportunity to really sit and think about this specific concept of the conscious awakening to become the observer of my thoughts, then being my thoughts as my identity. It's an easy concept to think about, but it's a more challenging concept to be principled in my daily vigilance and daily practice. And so that's something, we set resolutions going into the year here at Indivisible Arts, our nonprofit, we have something that we call AQ. There's intelligence quotients, IQ, emotional intelligence, EQ, and AQ is my awareness quotient. What percentage of the time am I up above it, being the observer of my thoughts, rather than down in it, getting lost in all my thoughts and obeying everything that's happening in there?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I like it. And really, the simplification is so good because but I think the other thing too, I'd love for your insight on is some people are like, got it. It's so simple, right? So mindfulness, meditation, I just struggle. And even the people that are like, I know when I'm mindful, even when I'm straying in my thoughts, that is part of meditation. It's part of mindfulness is to be aware.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the awareness of being, awareness of awareness. But I love your discussions on arts for mental health, but also arts for embodiment.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's so many people that can't get to those places through just awareness and observation of their surroundings. But yet when they delve into the arts, it's another way to tap into this energy of creativity that brings this kind of integration to their minds and bodies. Can you speak to that too on how
Yeah,
you see
yeah.
that?
Beautifully stated. And I have a friend, David Peters, who often says, when I'm doing art, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know who I am. Right.
Mm,
And I'd love to take a second to just talk about the nature of art, because I do believe the reason why we see it devalued so much, that it's taken out of the local schools. That's part of why I'm on this mission as a nonprofit. My daughter didn't have art at her local elementary school. Right. And part of why I think we devalue it and it gets out of schools is because we have an oversimplified understanding of this word art. And I'd love to just take a second, dimensionalize it. Let me just talk about art for a second,
hmm
because I view it like this, right? So as many of your listeners know, we have, two energetic systems, right? This active and the receptive, some call it the masculine and the feminine, right? Well, when I'm in that receiving mode and listening, holding space, right? Okay. And then there's this active mode of doing, making. All right. When I'm in that state of doing or making anything that's in this active state, walking, talking, reading a book, literally any action, if I do it with enough practice, focus, presence, maybe a little creativity, well, then it can be an art form. And so, yes, this includes painting and sculpting, but it can absolutely include washing the dishes. I mean, haven't we all had that experience where you're washing the dishes and the hot water is just the right hot and you're kind of in the zone, in the flow, and I'm throwing the fork into it while reaching for the next thing at the same time, and I'm in the zone, baby. I'm focused and present. Those two things. I'm focused and present in something as mundane or practical as washing the dishes, right? Now, here's what happens. If it's true that thoughts are the language of the mind and emotions are the language of the body, and then art is the language of the soul, well, then whenever I'm doing any form of art, my soul is present. This is the great opportunity of dimensionalizing our understanding of art to take this into account, because then it means doing the dishes is a pathway back to being soulfully present. That the way that I garden, the way that I eat, I can just be looking at my phone, shoveling food, or I can stop and even close my eyes and taste every delicious morsel and the fragrance and all the different things. One of them is just rushing through life, and the other one is living life as a soulful experience. And when I am in this place of soulfulness, it's because I'm living life as an art form. And so, because when a person says art, people are just thinking of drawing and painting, it takes away the opportunity to see everything in life as an opportunity to practice the art of doing that. We've all had a text that you mindlessly send off before you even realize you did it, or a text where I'm like quoting somebody and the emojis are just right, so they build this pattern. I can do it as an art form. This isn't about texting. I just use that example to say anything, truly anything, can be done as an art form. And if art is the language of the soul, then practicing doing these things in this way becomes the pathway back to having my soul present in my being.
Yeah, that's poetic, but it's, so it's kind of even
Practical.
the way you talk is a speaking with awareness in and of itself. So I'm listening, practicing what you're teaching us. So with that, do you see this aspect of, I'm sure with all the youth that you see, do you feel like there's these ways that some really flourish with this kind of tuning in consciousness, the way they delve into that, and then you see these different kind of groups or subcategories of people who
Yeah.
do that, or do you
Yeah.
think it's also just like a learned art that where people transcend the way that they tap in to become more of a
Conscious.
broader kind of entry point? What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on it?
So I'm very fortunate that I have an amazing vantage point to be answering this question because, you know, my nonprofit, Indivisible Arts, has a creative headquarter, Resin, in Hermosa Beach. And if you're ever in LA, please come visit, come see our after school program, and you'll see us teaching creativity and consciousness to youth. Consciousness in a way that is, I have parents say, wow, you guys are like Eckhart Tolle for kids or Dr. Joe
Yeah.
Dispenza for kids, right? You're Dr. Joe for kids. And it's inspiring to hear a 9-year-old or an 11-year-old speak about these concepts with such command that parents that are watching, and we invite parents to come watch and sit in the classes, the parents get as much or even more. I mean, these tools we teach, these fundamental life tools, this is industrial grade, adult grade stuff. And we're showing that we can teach it effectively and successfully to 10-year-olds with such a high level of efficacy that shows that we've got a product, we've got a process with a beginning, middle, end. It's straightforward, it's clear, it's 7 tools, it's our fundamental life tools. And through this process, a student, a person, anyone comes out the other side, what I would call conscious, trained as the aware observer of their thoughts. And here's what's so interesting. We use the word awareness for this first tool of the 7 tools we teach. We say awareness because that's what Eckhart Tolle uses as kind of industry standardish right now. So many teens feel that's even a little bit confusing, and they prefer to call it mind watching.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Right? Illustration from one of our youth, mind watching, right?
Can you describe that image for those who are just listening?
Sure. So for anyone who's just listening, what it is it's an illustration by a young artist, and she illustrated an eye looking at a brain, and the brain has all these thought form bubbles coming off of it saying like, I'm scared, or I'm happy, or I'm so upset. And this is at the heart of everything we teach, is this base core understanding that I am a soul observing the brain's behavior. And if I just obey what it's saying, those are effectively programs that then dictate my behavior and shape my reality. So this is amazing. I wake up at 5:30 every morning. I've had a full good 8 hours of sleep. And the first thing my brain says, I'll have a sip of coffee. I'm drinking my coffee. I've had 8 hours of sleep. And what's my brain saying? Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. How could this be? I'm so tired when I've just had 8 hours of sleep and a coffee, right? And if I don't catch that thought form saying, I am so tired, and I just go along with it, well, then I begin running the program of I am so tired. No wonder I feel so tired. I'm thinking I am so tired. Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. Yeah, that's going to be what happens, right?
Yeah.
How we talk to ourselves is everything, but awareness is of no use if it's not in use. And this understanding and tool of awareness is the one thing that I needed that I didn't know I needed, which is why I needed it so much. And to anyone who's listening who hasn't taken this journey of awakening, of beginning to practice observing the thoughts and knowing that I am the soul having the thoughts, and then changing those thoughts to something, guiding the thoughts to what's most helpful, what's best, then if you haven't gone through that process of awakening yet, then I am excited for you, because it is so awesome. and you'll feel amazing on the other side, and reality will look different from. It's amazing how things look different when we look at things differently. But if you're listening and you have already taken this journey, then you know how vital it is.
Yeah.
You know how important it is. You know, oh yeah, no, kind of awareness and perspectives, kind of everything.
This is you were holding up this book and you showed it too. So this is the FundaMentaLife Tools, a new curriculum for emotional resilience. So that's just something like, well, last year now, because we're at the 5th day of 2026.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah. That was a highlight of 2025, publishing this book. We wrote this program with youth from mid-pandemic. We our nonprofit, we were a creative laboratory in Hermosa Beach where we have a music studio, a fashion lab, a spray paint area, a 3D design center, painting, drawing, all the different creative mediums you can think of. And we were really focused on teaching creativity and innovation. And then the pandemic happened, and we experienced a couple local tragedies that made us realize, okay, these kids are going to need as much support as possible. What is the most powerful toolkit we could possibly give them? And that began the process of working with, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, shaman, executive director, coach, spiritual coach, sponsor, so many different people, head of a health organization, all coming together and saying, if we could only give somebody else a toolkit of 7 tools, what would they be? And there were a lot of great tools that got left on the editing, that didn't make it. The reason why we chose 7 is if I sit down with a kid and I say, here, I've got these 25 tools, it's overwhelming. It's too much. 7, that's manageable.
Yeah.
In fact, 7 is so little that it's just the right amount where a person doesn't have to memorize them, because anything a person can memorize, they can forget.
Right. Yeah.
7's the amount where it can just become part of the person.
I love that. Can you tell us the 7?
Sure. So the first is, and real quick, to answer your question of when we see groups of students learning this, what I observe firsthand is, one, like they all get it. There's no barrier. The challenge of learning it when we're 35 or 45 is that I've already gone decades without it. So how could this be? If this is so important, how come it didn't find me earlier, right? There's no deprogramming to do. They're just available. Secondly, what we see is their lives like take off. We see them have a different level of like command and control. And we see this with adults. When they have their awakening, all of a sudden everything starts clicking because they're no longer, obeying ego gone wild, right? And so we just see a palpable shift, and whenever I'm in a place and everyone there is for the most part all conscious, all practice in mindfulness and awareness, it's got a feel to it. It's got a vibe to it, right? And sometimes we get it on like spiritual retreats or meditation retreats, but out in the common land, I don't see it all that often. And so next time you're in town, when you're swinging through, please come and sit on one of the classes, because you'll experience that feeling of sitting with 35, 40 youth going, oh my gosh, everybody here is conscious. This has a vibe to it. It's got a vibe to it. And it's just so, it provides people hope when they go, okay, this can be our future, because a future where we are conscious is going to give us completely different results than the trajectory we're on, listening to the programming and the patterns and the patterned programming. And quite honestly, looking at the patterns and programs out there, there's a lot of horror films as an entire industry. I mean, come on, how did we end up here as a society saying this is a great idea for 4K HD Dolby blasting through a person's cellular structure the sounds of stress and horror? What are we doing? Okay, so the 7 tools. You ready? Okay, so this first one, awareness, that is kind of like the on-off switch, right? It's the master, right? So to be the aware observer of my thoughts, also understanding my thoughts are like programs. And so, what I believe in my mind is going to be what I experience in my reality. And I have the ability to change it. So I can say, I hate homework, and I can say, I'm grateful I have a free education. One of those two is going to give me a completely different experience as I sit down to do my homework today. You can tell I work with kids. You get from the example.
Right.
The second tool we teach is acceptance. Radical acceptance of all that is as it is. Thy will be done. And the peace and the serenity that comes for just accepting everything is as it is. Letting go of all the frustration and irritation at traffic, right? Traffic is outside my hula hoop. It is not mine to control. I do not need to listen to the opinions of whining, especially if they're my own opinions in my head. And I can change that station to something much more helpful. So that's that second one, acceptance. The third, and this is where we get the, oh, you guys are like Dr. Joe for kids, is intention. How to have a vision. How in the world can I hit the bullseye of what I'm shooting for if I don't know what I'm shooting for? And I'm amazed. I took an entire school district's worth of teachers through this particular workshop. And we sat down. I said, okay, a piece of paper in front of all of them, a pencil in front of all of them. I said, okay, I want you to write down 3 intentions you have. What are the three most important things that you want to have come true for you in the next 9 months? And the room was like perfectly still. No one picks up their pencil. 45 seconds go by. Everyone's just still kind of, someone raises their hand. So like, kind of like a New Year's resolution? Yeah, exactly like that. Like, what is your intention? What's your vision? What do you want for yourself? And I realized in this moment, looking at this sea of whatever, 85 different teachers and administrators, that we as adults, we stop having intentions. We stop dreaming. We stop shooting for our wishes and our visions. I just began surviving reality and just try and deal with the next wave coming at me. Try not to get pricked by the thorns or bump into any walls. Completely different thing than having a clear intention and knowing how to sit with that intention and create visions. 3D movies, sight, sound, smell, touch, feel, with an elevated emotion of feeling like this is coming true through first person point of view. And this is the skill that we teach these kids and we teach these high schoolers. And then the high schoolers are able to come back and say, yeah, actually, I just made the varsity water polo team, and a big part of it, and this kid was a freshman. He's actually downstairs right now, is he did this visualization practice, and he was the first, Redondo Union high schooler to ever make varsity as a freshman, right? And a big part of it, obviously all of his hard work and all the things, but this was part of it. He did this visualization practice, first person, visualizing and feeling as it's coming true, feeling as if this is coming true, creating just, a trace amount of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. And the presence of those 3 things creates this feeling of pleasure that then the subconscious goes, oh, well, anything involved with that pleasure, let's go towards that. So then all of a sudden going to the gym to work out for water polo doesn't feel like hard work. It feels like something that we want to do. Why? Because it's in resonance with our intention. Why? Because we've made a clear, specific intention of what it is that we want. So if you're listening right now and you haven't made 2026 quote unquote resolutions, well, I ask you, please consider taking a time and be able to answer for yourself, what is it that I want to come true in my life? What do I want? And if you're having a difficult time getting started, then consider just starting with, I want to laugh more. I want to be healthy. I want to experience the love of my family and friends. Let's start with some easy ones. Those are really good too. Every single day I say those to me so that there is no doubt in my mind, with absolute clarity, my subconscious knows exactly what we're shooting for today. And guess what? I get to see an awful lot of it because I am co-creating it, because there is an absolute sense of clarity of what it is we are shooting for. So that third tool we teach, intention. Fourth tool, gratitude. Now, growing up, gratitude had a little bit of funk to the word because it was usually a parent going, you need to be more grateful, right? Maybe guilt is this shadow element in this perception of this word.
Guiltitude. Yeah, that word needs to be called guiltitude.
For sure, right? Yeah. And invoking this tool of awareness and knowing that my thoughts are like programs that I'm running. That when I say, ugh, I hate homework, yeah, it's going to feel like that homework takes even longer tonight. If I'm saying I'm grateful I have a free education, a teacher who cares about me, I'm going to go to college, so I need to know this, and I'm grateful I'm going to college. The faster I do this, the more early I can hang out with my friends. I actually enjoy learning now that I think about it. Those six thought forming forms coming together like a tapestry, right? Creates completely different energy and attitude for those next couple 3 hours. And that's the name of the game. How can I create the right energy and perspective for me to get to go through this reality through? And I can't think of a greater mentality and vibe to go through than gratitude, right? No amount of anxiety changes the future, and no amount of fear changes the past. But any amount of gratitude changes the present moment. And I can feel it right now, just talking with you, feeling this in my heart. Yeah, this is what it's all about. So we teach that practice to the youth as G flipping, right? So flipping a lens of gratitude.
Oh, that's
I
great.
hate homework. I'm grateful I got a free education. Or my brother is really bugging me right now. I'm actually grateful I have siblings and that he's healthy, right? Shifting our attitude. And so, yeah, pulling it away from this, the guilt of it and really
Yeah.
into, the appreciation in the present moment as an energy, as a tool, as something very functional that supports me, because life's challenges and irritants are everywhere. Traffic. Or I'm like, I mean, have you ever thought about this, Neil? If you were to say, I love music so much, I want to make the ultimate listening experience. I'm going to build a box and put it in my living room. And in this box, I'm going to make it comfy. I can put seat warmers in this box, this ultimate listening experience. I'm going to put 7 different speakers, surround sound all around me in this nice little cabin. It's going to sound so good. Well, guess what? That's the modern car. You are sitting in an automobile.
Right.
So I can be, listening to my brain complain about traffic, or I can be like, dude, I've got the best listening experience ever, and I'm sitting in it, and I'm sitting inside of a giant speaker. Oh, and by the way, on this supercomputer, in my hand, I have the entire anthology and discography of every Beatles song and every Zeppelin song. Like, what an amazing time to be alive. My goodness gracious.
Yeah.
So just that shift in mentality and perspective, right? So that's the fourth tool we teach, gratitude. And then onto compassion, starring Thich Nhat Hanh, onto forgiveness and overcoming resentment and that poison. Like when people get poison in their hearts, I stop being this divine soulful creature, and I end up being a bitter animal. And we look at what the world looks like out there on the news and the different factions in our country and all this different stuff. And so much of it stems from resentment and the bitterness and the poison in our veins because we feel like we've been hurt, we've been wronged, and somebody else should pay for it, rather than I've been hurt and I don't want to carry this pain anymore. I don't want to go around thinking that the world is a terrible experience. I'm going to forgive, not for the other person, but for myself. Forgiveness is an inside job. It's not about whether or not the other person's okay or not. It's not me letting them off the hook. Not leave. This idea that me thinking about that situation over and over and over again is going to somehow punish them is some strange thing my ego does to keep me in check and in pain and in suffering. But the truth is there isn't anything that can't be fully forgiven. And when we do, we're relieved of carrying that burden of that resentment. I had a really, really powerful experience we were teaching these 7 tools in the public school system. It was probably about 3 years ago. And we were on this tool, and a 5th grader asked, we took every 5th grade in the school district through this. 5th grader asked, well, is there anything that can't be forgiven? I mean, what do you if you murder somebody? You can't forgive somebody if they murder someone. And the teacher assistant raised her hand, and she had been in the class all year. Like I've been in there all year long. We were on the 6th tool. She hadn't spoken the entire time. She rose her hand. Woman in maybe her mid 40s, and she asked if she could speak to it. I said, yeah. To this question of this kid asking, is there anything that can't be forgiven? What if you murder someone? And she stands up and you can tell she's about to begin crying. And she says, 30 years ago, I had everything together in my life, and I was pregnant, and a drunk driver um, hopped the curb and crashed into my car with me and my husband in it, and it instantly killed her husband. And the moment she, came to consciousness, is when they told her that she had lost her child as well. This last connection to a life she was building with her husband, and it destroyed her life. This drunk driver, and this drunk driver got sober and began writing her letters from prison that she never read, until a few years back, a few years before, when she was sharing this with these students, um, who I'm sure will never forget that this moment in school. And she said finally she was willing to read a letter, and she realized that this person is sober now, and it was just clearly the biggest mistake they could have ever meant in their life. He's a peaceful person, and they have a family as well. This destroyed his family, right? He's in jail, for decades, and it completely took away his life as well.
Mm.
And and so finally she agreed to meet up with him, and she went to the prison and met him, saw him for the first time since his sentencing and hearing decades back. And they hugged, and they cried, and they just held each other. And she said that when she left the prison that day, it was like this weight that she had been carrying, this cloak of weight, was lifted and released. And she was relieved of carrying this burden of this hate, this anger, and this resentment towards this person who equally, their life was destroyed by this terrible, terrible accident. Um, and so she said, yeah, anything can be forgiven. Um, and So it's just, it's this powerful stuff, but vital stuff, fundamental stuff. These were the fundamental things that, man, when I think about what was most important to teach me as a youth, reading arithmetic, this to me feels like something very, very fundamental to be teaching our youth, which is why we created it. Necessity is the mother of invention. And so this needed to be created. And so it's awareness, acceptance, intention, gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, and connection is the seventh one. And inside of connection is connection to me and you, and being fully present, and not having a conversation with someone while I'm on my phone, being totally present, locking eyes, being present with myself, being connected to my own soul, right? And all the different practices that I can get into the flow state, or I'm focused, um, but relaxed at the same time, in this flow state of the creative experience, connecting to my own soul, connection to nature, connection to beauty and awe, and then ultimately connection to a higher power of my own understanding, right? So this is a big concept. This is as big of a concept as there is, and we're here teaching it in public schools because we've cracked the code on how to teach it just so. Because I'm not teaching about what my belief system is. None of the students know what it is that I believe, but I ask them to reflect. Okay, well, what is it that you feel governs the universe? Let's fill up the whiteboard with a brainstorm session, highlighting all of your youthful ideas. What do they respond with? Well, they say God. They're saying, well, 4.2 billion people on this planet of the Abrahamic faith say God. Okay, so that's an option. What else? Higher power, Mother Earth, Father Sky, divine consciousness, universe with a capital U, karma, love, cause and effect. All great answers, all true answers. Then ultimately someone says, well, it's science. Hold up now. Science? Who here believes in science? Everyone raises their hand. Who here believes that science is a power greater than you? Everyone raises the other hand. Okay, so now, does that mean science can be a power that is greater than us, that we can draw strength and support and faith and hope and love and connection from? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, now let's do this experiment. It's gonna be a little bit like the awareness visualization. Everyone closes their eyes, they get into breathing, they're visualizing a scene, and then I begin having them visualize what would it look like for them to be connected to the universe through the small, still space on the backside of the heart, between the heart and the spine, and through the middle of the brain, I'll tell them, right? The pineal gland, to visualize what it looks like for those two to meet, overlap, and then connect to the universe. This is just an imagination exercise. Come on, have fun with it. What could
Yeah.
that possibly look like? And they're visualizing and they have their hands on their heart. Next thing you know, they start doing what I call that like Stevie Wonder sway, where they're like, kind of gliding back and forth, feeling it, feeling the vibe, and then we have them open their eyes. And before any of them move, who here feels even just a little bit different than you did 90 seconds ago? Oh my gosh, everybody. And they can feel that sacred stillness of that presence in the room. You can't fake that. You can't simulate it. They know what they're feeling. They're having a spiritual experience, and they're doing it through imagining their relationship to science, right? They're through using their own, we'll say it, imagination, right?
Mhm.
Directed consciousness, are able to shift and transform their state of being to one that we would, in the spiritual community would consider a spiritual, soulful state of being. Um, but we don't use the word spiritual. We don't call it meditation. We don't, right? It's we keep it straightforward and science based and letting them have their own personal firsthand experience. Um, and for a lot of students, they're not lucky enough to have parents that can talk about God so easily. Some are. Some have faith in their household, have God in their household. Powerful stuff, right? There's a reason why 4.2 billion people rely on God for their sanity, clarity, faith, support, so on. But for so many others, like myself, that grew up with science kind of being the thing, it wasn't until I was 35 and somebody else invited me to declare a higher power of my own understanding and begin creating a direct relationship to the universe through myself, that I began to fully understand the power of that vital connection to source creative, right? And so, uh, before this podcast meeting, we're talking kind of off air about just different life experiences, and there is that space of those different, youthful, adventurous experiences creates a pathway to creativity through other means, right? And but the pathway to creativity through a completely clear and sober mind is through the heart as the seat of the soul and the pineal gland as the transducer of sacred information, and the two of them combining creates this potent space that becomes the firebox, the power engine for true creativity. And that's what we're teaching to these students. We just don't necessarily put it into those terms. We put it into very, very basic, easy terms that they feel comfortable with and that we know their parents will feel comfortable with. Our goal isn't to indoctrinate these kids. It's about laying 7 vital tools at their feet and saying, take what works for you and leave the rest.
Yeah, what a download. That was so good. I mean, just I love the term mind watching. Again, I just kept thinking of that as you were sharing that. I love
That's
that.
right.
It's so good. It's like that's what it is. It's
That's what
like
it is.
watching, yeah, mind watching, and but also just you kind of paint the picture of this reality of like what a special thing. Like I just want to go there. I almost made it. I was coming back from San Diego. We were messaging and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to, you and your team were like, come." And I'm like, "Oh man." And so I couldn't
It'll
make it,
happen. It'll
but it'll
happen.
happen.
It'll happen. Yeah.
And yeah, like anything, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I could go there, think what would it have been like to have had
Mhm.
something like that?" But what I love to do is because I'm here now and I more teach adults and older kids, but then I've had, all the one-to-ones and some of the group trainings that I've done. And so I've been able to see like what happens when you get a group and what happens when you can like catalyze and jumpstart their dreams. Not my dream, not my technique or my idea on what their health should be or any of that. It's more like I just love to be a conduit to lend awakening and then see what happens when
That's right.
other
Mhm.
people catch that? Because it lights them up, and then I'm like, wow, I'm just so inspired by what you just
Yeah.
said and what you're sharing. And so I feel like you um just share so much out of this place of like really insightful. And then I love how you're like also your big mission is to facilitate other flames so they
Mhm.
can brightly shine, because that's oneness and humanity
Mhm.
wrapped up into one as well. So it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
this I mean, the sharing and the spreading of the flame is something that is unique to this moment, and, um, I was talking to another, lifelong, principal and what do you call it, superintendent, right? A leadership in school systems, and we were talking about where the mindfulness movement really worked and where it fell short. And one of the areas where it fell short, which I think is the very specific both opportunity and strategy that our nonprofit Indivisible Arts is, you know, focused on over the next 5 years on this pathway of the million conscious youth, is this: is that when a group of people understand their purpose, then they elevate from just being a group of people that know each other into a culture because they know
Mhm.
their why, they know their reason, they know their purpose. And so, you know, as we teach the tools, the seventh tool is this tool of connection.
Yeah.
And a big part of this connection is service. And so we're building out this network of youth who their service and them getting 501c3 nonprofit volunteer hours for college is to learn these tools and spread these tools to others who they in turn, upon getting to the connection tool and getting certified in the tools, then turns around and teaches it to the next person, and so on and so on and so on, spreading the flame, spreading the illumination, right? And so that is this pathway to a million conscious youth that picks up on the promise that was left behind where mindfulness may have fell short on building culture and connectedness and community through consciousness instead of just teaching it very straightforward for what person's one-on-one individual betterment. And another area where it fell short really is a huge part of what we're inspired by is CBT and DBT, cognitive behavior therapy and dialectical behavior therapy. And they're fantastic, but as I'm sitting there filling out those forms for the first time, I'm like, oh, there's got to be a different way to say this. There's got to be a cooler way to make this form. There's got to be a more
Yeah.
fun experience that we can create. And I'm not knocking, all the people who created it. Obviously, DBT and CBT is brilliant, but more so saying, cool, how do we stand on those shoulders to make an even better product for this next generation? And that's where we're gonna re-release this book every single year because it's gonna be that different every single year because it's gonna continue to evolve and get better and better and better and better so that it is the absolute best product that we can offer to a person who we may never meet, most likely will never meet. Some kid who is in Missouri and it's 2 in the morning and they're writhing in bed because they just got suspended again for vaping. They don't even know why they vape. They don't even like it. And they're hearing through the floorboards their parents argue in the kitchen, like, should we send them to therapy? Does it even matter? Insurance doesn't cover it. This kid's not going to benefit. Now this kid feels like a burden because they're struggling with their mental health and they don't know how to change themselves, right? I want a place where that kid can go for free right now and begin learning these tools from other youth that look the way that he looks, that have the same problems he has. And he can do that now. 2 dozen local volunteers, local teenagers volunteered last summer to come together and build a platform that they call StreamOfConsciousness.life. And at StreamOfConsciousness.life, you can go there now. It's the beta version. You can learn these tools, or you can hear their real life experience on how they overcame a teacher who just doesn't understand, or arguing too much with their parents, or overcoming a friend who took their own life, right? Talking about these things openly in these 5-minute shares so that maybe somebody else who's going through the same thing or something similar can hear themselves in that story and be able to make that shift through these tools from the support of somebody else of their own same generation.
Yeah. That's I love that.
It's pretty cool, right?
So amazing. I went to that website and checked it out. I'm like, oh, I love this. It's a prototype, but just knowing these guys, these kids came together, volunteered out of their
Right.
creative energy and created that. It's
Yeah.
powerful.
It's
Yeah.
powerful. It's powerful. And it shows that we have something that works. And I'm not taking
Yeah.
credit for mindfulness, far from it. That's that.
No, no.
But it's the willingness to walk the path where we hold the space so that the consciousness of mindfulness can co-create with the creative imprint of this generation, so that what comes out is something that's resonant with them because it's made from their cultural DNA,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is their art, their creativity, their ideas, their languaging, their examples, their illustrations, right?
Yeah. No, it's good. Okay. I love it.
Yeah, and just sharing, just sharing this book. This book is actually the same size as Be Here Now. It's the same height, width, depth, and it was made that way in homage to Be Here Now by Ram Dass, so that it can just fit
Hmm.
on the bookshelf, right, up
Right.
right next to it, right, and um, so it's full of illustrations, and it's more of a workbook, an interactive workbook. So if anybody's, it's very reasonably priced. I think it's only $12, and we put it on Amazon, so it's very easy for anybody to have it at their doorstep the very next day. So if and it's not just for youth. This is adult level, life level stuff. So if you're out there and you want to have more mental and emotional health tools that are specific and tools based, or you're struggling and need support, or you're just looking to make yourself, your better self through a level of um, uh, practicing mastery, right? Then please consider this book. It was made for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's right away you can see and feel that this applies to anybody. And I think it also is like as a dad of three kids, where I'm like
Sure.
always on my toes,
Mhm.
mentally thinking, okay, easy to tell myself this and easy to
Mhm.
tell another grown up,
Right.
this. You could
Right.
tell I'm a dad
Right.
because I'll say grown up instead of adult, but it's like, then I'm like, but how would my 7-year-old need to hear this?
Right.
How would my 5-year-old want to hear this? How would my 9-year-old daughter,
Okay.
what would inspire her? So, I mean, like, because I see that coming through all of your stuff. And I love that
Yeah.
because in life, I feel like when you have to crystallize something and distill it and make it fun for kids, you realize that is mastery in and of itself. And I feel
Right.
like nothing has been a better personal development tool
Mhm.
than, being a husband, yes, but being a dad of kids and having them be like, just see them light up when so I'll explain my floor to the mouth work and the system I created of unlocking people through this phase shift and getting people to go into a whole different state of perception on a one-to-one. And with my kids, they're like, you can see their eyes glaze over. So I'm like, you're right, guys, that is so boring. So then I jokingly say, now guys, now let me tell you for another. Oh, no. All of a sudden, my tongue will go, and I just start playing. I'll say, "Tongue, could you
Right.
go back in my mouth?" And so then I started to teach them like movement of the tongue and how to unlock it through this silly game of the tongue having a life of its own. And they're cracking up, and for like 5 minutes, they're rolling around and they're imitating me. And because I want to have them help I wanna have them receive the help of moving their tongue, the floor of the mouth to free up their faces and bodies. So I'm like, I can talk about it or I can create something way better, way sillier, way more fun, and they just do it or see
Right.
it and feel the effect. And so, I mean, like,
Right.
hats off
Exactly.
to you for this movement, this mission, because every time I hear you share more, I'm like, wow, it's so powerful what you're doing and are part of doing because it's like everything for grown-ups is here and then it's advanced level to know how do we do this for kids because
Mhm.
most adults like we are kids who didn't get it. We didn't have that.
Right.
We didn't have
Right.
somebody there for us like that. So we grew up as these adults having to deconstruct and erase, like
Right.
you said,
Right.
and take away this whole layered life to come back to childhood and living like a child. And
Yeah.
then what you're doing is giving people a chance, giving kids a chance to start at that level, which is pretty phenomenal.
Well, and the challenge is that the people, the adults doing the deconstructing need to have a high enough level of understanding and intelligence and capacity and articulateness to be able to take all this and communicate it clearly to somebody else. The challenge is usually, at least the archetype of that kind of person as a professor or a doctor, their
Yeah.
perspective and is all the way up here, that bringing it down to a level that's base level, common language, normal speak, lacking pretense, and that's where, our pathways as a nonprofit of co-creating all this stuff with youth so that their voice is empowered and their inner geometry is imprinted into the nature of how we're doing this. Our role is to hold space and guide the process, right? If I'm just making it, I'm not doing it right. It's not about how I would think I would explain it. It's about do my best I can to explain it, and then really being observant on whether or not that worked or not, or turn some dials, right? Because that's the
Yeah.
specific dance. Because you can't just turn around and say to a 15-year-old, okay, well, how would you explain it? It's like they're not prepared for that.
Yeah.
But
Right.
let me try it 5 different times, and I can tell which one of those five you like the most.
Yeah.
Let me turn some dials and try it again, right?
Yeah.
And this iterative practice of empowering their voice by being attuned to the subtleties and nuances of the response they have as they go through the experience of trying to pick up what we're laying down, right? And teaching at the same time, right? So we're the space, and that's
Hmm.
fun because that's a flow state where I'm
Yeah.
observing and taking in and being active at the same time. And boy, oh boy, if I'm trying to mentalize my way through it, it trips and fumbles apart. So the
Totally.
only way to do it is from this elevated flow state from the perspective of the soul. And guess what? That's a real fun time.
Yeah.
That's a fun place to be.
It's I don't know why it reminded me of this, but I'll just there's a interaction I was having with a mom who's bringing her like 16-year-old son in, and that child has a spectrum of things going on. We could say that they carry that label of autism in that family, and I was just finding in this is a very specific instance, so this is not a great summary of my work, but when I was working with this awesome guy, this young man, um, him sitting still was not going to work. He decides to stand, walk out of the office, and I'm following him. I'm working on him when I can, and that's what I've done with toddlers too. It's like, hey, if they're going to run around the room, I'll pick them up, I'll fly
What you
them
got?
around the room,
Yeah.
and release their kidney and whatever needs to be done.
Wow.
And so, but with this one, I was getting in my head. I'm like, why can't I find a way to get through? Of course, there's the understandable things of like, I'm not trying to change him. I'm not trying to make him sit. I'm not trying to make him want to let me do in the mouth work that the mom says will help him because she does it with some guidance. And I've loved teaching parents how to work on their
Ooh,
kids, but
that's a tricky spot to be in,
it's a
right?
tough
Mom
spot.
has the expectations to get in there and do it, and you're like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna force this.
But moms like her are so powerfully, they're not necessarily desperate in that moment, but they out of desperation for change for
Right.
their child,
And
they
they
pursue
care. It's
so
out of love.
much.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
you are so amazing. Like what you're doing is extraordinary, and not to put it on anybody that isn't doing a ton of things, but in that moment, I left my mental mind, I set it down, and I tuned in, and I just started to engage with him with intention. We could say
Mm.
telepathic, but let's just say with intention.
Yeah.
And I started to just communicate without words. And I started to just s-
Hmm.
be there next to him and talking to him that way. And it went into this smooth place
Mm.
of where he responded to my suggestions, and he would lie down on the table so I could work on this or that. And after that moment, I realized, yeah, I tend to be pretty good at tuning in and mind watching, and I tend to be pretty good at, like, letting go of my intellect to follow the intuitive flow, but there's always more. And in that instance, I realized, ooh, this is what he needed. And if
Mm.
I and I think took me a while to get there, but once I got there, now I'm like, ooh. So mentally I couldn't have gotten there because it wouldn't have made sense, but it made so much sense once it happened.
Well, and this brings the whole conversation full circle to creativity and the nature of creativity at its absolute core and base as action or movement within the masculine energetic space, right? We talk about the receiving the feminine, the action masculine, right? And when I'm doing and creating that as my pathway to art as the language of the soul, well, here's the thing is in this space of mindfulness and awareness, there's two different states. There's the receptive, I'm observing my thought forms, but then there's the active, I'm talking to my brain. That
Hmm.
is the ultimate creative act. That is the single smallest little building block of the act of creativity. So this is the intentionality of the mind. This is sure there is observing my thoughts, but let me replace them. Let me speak to this other entity through my mind and the frequencies emanating from my intentional conscious thought forms, right? And this act of deciding to have a thought and how to create thoughts. I think that's the core building block. Well, how in the world can we teach these core little Lego building blocks if the 12-year-old doesn't understand the concept of awareness at all? Right. So, this pathway of awareness as the core fundamental tool so that we can then get into the nature of creativity as these core building blocks, one thought form at a time. And I just like highlighting, there's the different every single one of these seven tools has an active, it has a masculine, feminine presence to it, has an
I love
active,
that.
receptive state to it. Every single one of these tools works in that way, right? Acceptance in the receptive is to like, I accept that is what it is. That was the Supreme Court ruling. I accept it. I'm not gonna go just yell at everybody and be angry because of it. Well, the active is now what can I go do about it? Let me get into action.
Hmm.
I'm accepting something so that I'm in a more present, stable, centered place to go get into action about it. That is proper use of the acceptance, right? If someone's bullying me, acceptance isn't like, hey, it's okay. They're going to bully me. It's like, nope, I accept that hurt people, and I'm going to not take it personally. And I'm going to accept that this other human being is not mine to control. And now that I can accept it and I'm back to a state where I can think clearly, now let me see what I can do by going to the teacher and the principal and the right authority. So each one of these tools has like an active and passive harmonious experience where there's the dual sides of each one of these concepts, of these seven concepts. And so thank you for bringing out the creative as the active presence within the tool of the first tool of awareness.
Yeah, it's so good. I think such a great resource. I have this thought of like, oh, I could think of myself and other people I know, and I'm like, I just want to get the books and have us do like a book club on it, and then we as parents get together and talk about it after, and then share it with our kids. I'm like, oh, I might have to do that because
Oh
it's
my
so
gosh,
good.
will you please can I please do that with you? Would you experiment with me? I would love to
Yeah,
have just the data of
yeah,
what that looks like, right? If you can get a group of parents
yeah,
together, then you can say, and highlighting the author of the book. I would love to be a participant on that because that sounds really interesting.
yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. I feel
you
like it
know,
would benefit me so much, and I think for those out there, it's like the best way to ever show somebody something is to live it, understand it, and I feel like with what you were
live
saying,
it.
it's like, yeah, to
Yeah.
it feels like a great resource that I need to for myself, but also for my kids and all the people I come across.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point in that, yes, we're articulating this vision as the pathway to a million conscious youth, but this is a family thing, right? And
Yeah,
even if a kid pursues consciousness, if it's not supported at home, anything that's not utilized or practiced, can go away over time, right? So how do we get the whole family and to
yeah,
motivate the parents by saying, because it's interesting as adults, you start going to adults and you say, "Hey, I think you need some tools," and they're like, "Yeah, we're good, buddy." But it's like, "Oh, we have these amazing tools that work great for your kids. Oh, I'd be happy to learn them."
hmm,
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit true with our high schoolers as well. You go to a high school and you say, "Hey, I need to learn about gratitude." They're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I know what gratitude means." But you say, "Hey, can you learn this in a way where you can teach it so that you can get 501(c)(3) nonprofit volunteer hours for your college resume?" Yeah, all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're a very, very
Incentive.
motivated student. Yeah,
Yeah.
what you're talking about earlier about our kids kind of rolling our eyes to us. It's just how it is. I think I'm not sure why the universe designed it this way, but I think
Right.
there's something to it to where it helps us be a community,
Yeah.
because we all need each other. My daughter, at some point, she'll roll her eyes at what I'm saying, but then she'll hear someone say the exact same thing and pick it up. Because here's what I think is happening: it's not that our kids aren't listening, because they are. It's that at a certain point, and yours are still young yet. I think this happens around like 8 or 9 ish. So maybe your oldest daughter is, once they start seeing us as something different than like a perfect superhero, right? Age 5, we're still like, we're amazing, right?
Yeah.
But then,
Right.
but then the kids get 8, 9, 10. They start to wisen up and start to see the chinks in the armor over here, and so then what it is they're hearing what we're saying. More importantly, they're watching how we behave, right? How we're modeling. They hear what they're saying, and then they kind of hold on to it, and they wait until another trusted authority figure over here mirrors what we're saying and validates it, and all of a sudden it unlocks that for them. And the way I begin to understand this was happening is I get a lot of parents who text me saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for teaching my kid this. I've been saying it to them for years, but now they come home quoting you for it. And so thank you, because I've been trying to tell them that for years." And they'll be texting me something that maybe I don't even necessarily say. So I'm like, maybe what I'm doing is just validating what you, parent, have been saying at home. And so then it unlocks that for the kid to say, okay, yeah, yeah, maybe my parent isn't crazy after all. I learned that they weren't perfect, but on this one, yeah, I think they're right as well. And they just kind of wait for a second until they see it mirrored. And so, a nonprofit like ours or a community center like ours, part of what we're doing is supporting the local parents by, supporting what it is that they're teaching at home, by being a trusted outside source that is saying, "Oh yeah, no, this consciousness stuff, it's right," or these principles, or integrity, or gratitude, or being kind. No, no, this is right. This is the way to go. You can listen to
Yeah.
your parents on this one.
Well, I know we've got a few minutes, so do I have time to ask you a couple
I
questions?
got nothing but time for you, brother.
Yeah,
Let's go.
I want to ask you. The bigger phrase is compromise to alchemized, which
Yeah.
is, how do we go from compromise to alchemize? I feel like you could insert consciousness. You could insert. It started off as how can we go from a compromised airway to an alchemized airway because of my work with tongue tie. But then wisely, my wife said, Why don't you take out the airway?" And I said, "Yeah, because I don't ever think about airway as this one thing. I'm like, what does proper breath facilitate? What does proper feeding for babies facilitate? It's so they can feel nourished, so that they can be satisfied, so that they can live a happy life. So it's more about like how can we go from compromised to alchemized? Alchemy being a nonlinear journey that's like turning lead into gold. It's this mystical thing, but I feel healing is this. So
Mm.
for me, one of the things that I love to do is to talk with healers or guides or both with you, just um, consciousness and thought leaders. And I want to ask you what your personal legend is, and I'll give you a
Oh,
little context for that
yeah.
because there's 2 ways, 3 ways you could go about this. You could tell me yours, or you could tell me what does it look like to be somebody who lights so many flames or candles to see kids' personal legends come to fruition. A personal legend can mean 2 things. Paulo Coelho in The Alchemist defines it as simple. Like he just said, "What is your dream? What do you love? What's your joy? What is that?" I love interpreting with reading the book so many times to look at that moment when the mystical king talks to Santiago, the shepherd, the protagonist, and he says to Santiago, who's trying to pursue his dream, "The universe conspires in your favor when you are in pursuit of your personal legend." So I'm like, oh yeah, personal legend feels like your destiny, your
Mhm.
calling, what you're put on this planet to do, what you're uniquely designed for. So that's part one is I'm going to ask you all that, but like for you, Raphael, what is your personal legend, or share more on that? What struck you?
Yeah. 10 years ago, um, I was experiencing a very fruitful, creative agency life, and I had climbed the corporate ladder only to feel like, man, my ladder must be on the wrong building because I feel empty and spiritually bankrupt in the inside. I feel like I'm reaching out to the purpose and energy of the universe, and it doesn't feel like there's anything there.
Mm,
What are we doing here? This is empty. What's my point? What's my purpose? And so that became this mission to be able to answer your question, right? And is it, should I go back and teach? And I knew service was part of it. I knew serving so that it was something bigger than myself. And ultimately, you know, creating a nonprofit so that I can give to the next generation all of the amazing gifts that being a creative professional, that creativity and art have given me in my lifetime, where I've traveled the world shooting photography and launched all sorts of brands, and I've just done so much crazy cool stuff. Um, and uh, Creativity has given that to me as a gift.
mhm,
And then along the way, the pandemic happened, and this became a mental health thing, and all the the great readers and teachers and guides and the Eckhart Tolles and Joe Dispenzas and Thich Nhat Hanh and all the different people that I was reading for my own personal transformation. I was saying to myself, well, wait a minute, how come a person like how come this wasn't taught to me when I was younger and in a way where I could digest it? And so
mhm,
that became the mission, how
mhm,
to make all of this great teaching that's out there and how to relanguage it in a way that's just simple as pie, doesn't take remembering
yeah.
because it's unforgettable, because it's the basics that, yeah, I think I'm always just had that in me, but I just never had anybody articulate it on the outside in a way that unlocks its presence on my inside, right? And that's what we're doing here is this practice of re-remembrance. This is all the basic stuff that for compassion, like I don't need to be taught to be kind to another living creature. It's just in there.
Mhm,
Now, it might get knocked out of me by playing shoot 'em up games for a decade. I don't
right.
know, right? But so all of these tools of forgiveness and letting go and accepting as it is, it's all in us. It's a function of animating it within us through articulating it with such clarity that a person goes, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's it. Oh yeah, that's the exact tool, and this is how it works. And now I'm stronger at it, and I can get reps at it because it's something tangible." That's the challenge with consciousness, is that it's abstract. It makes it elusive. What are we talking about even? Consciousness. What does even consciousness mean? The truth
Mhm,
is we use the term conscious as someone who is the awakened observer of their thoughts, but it's not like that's like the standardized definition of that word. We're choosing to use it that way because, well, is there a better word to use?
mhm,
If there is, please tell me, because then we'll start using that one. I really hope there. I really want there to be a better word. It's too bad woke means something else, because I feel like
right.
that could have been a good candidate, and awakened doesn't quite have that same punch, right? But if there's a better word for it, let me know. But how are we gonna get anywhere? And I mean, let me ask you this: we're talking about purpose. We're talking about this mission. What percentage of people do you think are conscious as awakened and knowing that they are the aware observer of their thoughts? What percentage would you guess?
Well, I feel like I feel like there's so many people I come around to where I'm like, "Yeah, it's like 60 to 70%," and then I think you're gonna tell me something like 5%, right? Is that
I mean, 6 years. I mean, that I don't know. I think you give humans a lot of credit to as far as knowing that they're not their
Mhm,
thoughts. That
mhm,
opinion, that ego. There's no the closest studies that I could find say around 15 to
mhm.
20%, right?
Right, right.
And to me, that feels a little bit more in line with what I'm seeing out there. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean they're not intelligent. I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
It's that,
right.
do they know this concept that's at the core foundation of mindfulness,
No, you're right. No,
right?
I think you're right. It was kind of a joke to say, like, I s I don't just I don't just get around people like that share similar values. However, there's a time now
Oh,
where
I
I think,
see. Yeah, the people you hang out with probably 60 to 7%.
but you know, I mean, when I'm like getting out there and I'm like, oh, you know, it is very different, and it's always good for me to like think who, I mean, because, well, it was the way I grew up and all of that, and then I just feel like I had people come into my life and they taught me so much, and I'm
Right.
so fortunate to have had these people or families take me in and say, "Neil, let me show you what this is," or how to. They just would do their normal life, and for me, that was revelatory. So I think there's so many people who have either not had that, or they don't, or it doesn't spark them. And so I think you're right. Totally, I'm your percentage makes so much sense to
I
me.
mean, I think more. I think even more than it not sparking, that just people just don't know. It's just
Yeah,
never been brought to their attention in a way that they could even remotely hear it. It hasn't been brought
yeah.
to their attention that isn't wrapped in either woo or wrapped in academia in a way where they could just
Well,
understand what they're
I think
trying to say.
I think of what you're doing, and I'm like, this is out of this world amazing. Like I was blown away when I heard you on Mark's podcast, the Unbeatable Mind, because I'm like, I don't see many things out there like that now. But absolutely, I saw zilch when I was growing up, and I'm like, this is so like
Yeah,
hydration for the mind and like
yeah,
nourishment for the soul. So
yeah,
I really feel like you're really part of this huge answer to a problem that's just been there, but it's like, how do we choose to look? Your I love your flipping the G, right? When you're talking
yeah,
about gratitude, it's like
yeah.
there's either let it happen or be a part of changing the future, and I fully see you're doing that.
Yeah,
It's
you
really
could say, listen,
inspiring.
you could say 80% of the people are not conscious in this way, or you could say, oh my gosh, there's so many people that we're going to wake up. This is amazing,
Yeah,
right? So much
yeah.
opportunity. The thing is this, whether or not it's 20% or 10% or, and I've had the luxury of um, asking that question to hundreds of people.
Mhm,
So I know that like the average answer in response to me is 8 to 12%.
mhm.
Um, the people with the highest level of consciousness are pretty quick to always say like 1%, 2%, but I think it's because they're comparing it to their own level of consciousness. Um, and only a handful of people, say more than 50%, but usually those people, it's they aren't awakened, so they don't totally understand the question, right? And so the reason why I say that is this, though. Let's say the answer is 20%, right? Um, can you think of anything more important to be able to give to somebody else than this tool, this message, this light? You said this spreading of this light of awakened consciousness. That's like the greatest thing I could do for somebody else, right? The whole teach a fisherman to
Yeah,
fish thing, right? Like
mhm. Totally, yeah.
or to spark someone's light. Okay. Well, then, if 20% are awakened, we'll say, and this is pretty binary. A person knows this lesson tool or not, and there's varying levels. I'm not conscious 100% of the time. Nobody is. We go in and out of, listening to my ego and my, okay, I got it. Well, could there be anything more noble than this 20% over here bandying together to reach across the aisle and say, here, another starfish, come join the awakened world, right? That what is sitting latent is this potential, this opportunity for us awakened people like me and you and your listeners, for all of us to lean in and say, you know what, we're going to start a movement where we start inviting the people who haven't woken up yet into this world in a way they can hear, in a way that they would like to be invited, right? I don't feel that my purpose is to wake up anyone else. Heavens to know, I know it's not. But I think it's to cook spiritual nourishment so
Mm,
that when they do wake up, there's something healthy waiting for them,
love that.
right? That we
Yeah,
have a community, that together we build a community that is worth waking up for,
yeah.
right? That it's just fun, it's interesting, it's cool, it's feels revitalized and full of joie de vivre and excitement. We have these events here. This is so crazy. We have these events here, and this one blew my mind because we had so many. We had 100 people here that were in their 20s, and we had an open bar, and I was looking at a video of it, and despite the fact that we had this open bar and all this, you look around, you don't see a darn near a single drink and like darn near a single phone. And I'm like, whoa, 100 conscious 20 somethings get together and they're not on their phones. They don't have a drink in hand, even though it's available and free. Um, that's pretty cool.
Wow.
That to me is a indicator that when you build conscious community, then the level of connection that occurs is so fulfilling and inspiring on its own that we don't seek anything outside of ourselves to make ourselves feel any better than the wholeness that we're already feeling.
I love that. That's pretty profound.
It's cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. That is very just pretty anomalous within the world right there.
I saw a video. I'm generally out of town for New Year's Eve, and so I let the team, have some things here for New Year's Eve. And there was one year there was a party with a couple hundred people here, and I saw some videos of the party, and I was like, "There's no drinking. How is this possible? How is this possible that these late teens, early 20s, they've got the space to themselves, this big creative lab, there's DJs, there's music, and they don't need any chemicals or drinks or anything to make them feel different than they do. That's such a beautiful thing. Just the beauty of being just totally present. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah. That's golden. So there's part two of the question I want to ask you, which
Yeah.
is, a legend is like that place on a map where it's like a key or a guide, like you can see on the map. If it's like an inch, that's like maybe like 10 miles, and maybe you see a patch of trees over here, or the highway, a lake, or
Scale. Yeah.
scale, key, symbols. So um how do you knowing what you've said your personal legend is,
Yeah.
how do you navigate that, or what's your legend in terms of how do you stay attuned to
Yeah.
your legend?
Yeah.
How do you navigate the map of your life knowing
That's
that
a
you're
great
staying
question.
attuned to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the first is if I look at the legend and I look at the chapters of this story that I'm currently writing, I'd say probably I'm on mid chapter 5 of like a 23 chapter story.
Hmm.
Right. So for
Yeah.
like legend and scale, that to me gives me like context of like how far I've traveled versus how far this is going to go. And I
Hmm.
feel good about that. And that feels pretty clear. Um, the beauty and challenge of maps is that they get redrawn all the time.
Hmm.
Even rivers move. And so I'm going to use my magical origami skills to turn this map into a compass instead. So what I have
Nice.
is just a navigating compass and a North Star that I can just keep walking towards that North Star and it's all going to work out. Once I get into the map of it all, I have the tendency to mentalize this thing. And I would rather use the compass of my heart rather than a mental map, trying to decipher how I'm going to get from here to there. Because the beauty of that is, then I don't need to know all the steps to get there. That's the beauty of an intention is I don't need to know how to get there. And that's important to teach these youth because a lot of youth will not try something because they're like, well, I don't know how to get there.
Hmm.
I don't know how to become a champion tennis player or volleyball player or violinist or whatever it is. We don't need to know. I just need to know what the vision is, the intention, the North Star, and then I need to know what can I do today about it.
Hmm.
And you know what? If I can't physically do anything today, then what I'm doing today is I'm holding it in my imagination and I'm visualizing about it and I'm falling in love with the idea. And then I'll show up tomorrow and see if anything's revealed for me to do tomorrow.
I love that. So yeah, put some. You just hit it, because I love that you have like these inbuilt practices of like how your I love it, your personal compass, not personal legend, but personal compass of like it could be just simply living out of that fullness, or visualizing, with intention. Are there any other practices that you fall on or like count on that help you day to day stay in line with that compass?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, I will I'm gonna grab a visual aid in a second, but I'll tell you it's
Okay.
this. Um what I do is I have what I call my book of beliefs. It's my
Hmm.
sketchbook, it's my journal. It's a waterproof book.
Mm.
Okay. So then what I do is pretty much daily. The gym I belong to has both a sauna and a steam room.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go into the sauna with my book of beliefs, and everything I write in the book of beliefs is one of two things. It's either an intention, a vision that I'm going to go do, or it's a limiting belief that I'm looking to shift, right?
Mm.
And so then let's say it's the limiting belief I want to shift. I'll write down like, you know, boy, it's hard to fundraise to keep this nonprofit alive. I can honestly say that. I don't want to say that anymore because that belief is what's creating this reality. Okay, let me shift that to a new belief that I that's authentic. That's what's key. That it's authentic. A new belief that's authentic is I must have a gift at this because we're still around and growing year over year. We've never been in a better place going into this new year financially. And the more our audience grows, then the more support we get, and our audience keeps growing. Okay, once again, back to the awareness and programming, a much more helpful set of programs to create shifting and rewriting that inner belief. So I have a belief that I actually believe that's supportive.
Mhm.
So then I will turn that into a symbol. I'll draw that as a
Mm.
symbol,
Okay.
and then I will sweat into it. And I've got my watercolor pencils and all this.
Okay.
So then I'm
Talk about alchemizing. Yeah.
my literal physical sweat is marrying with the pigments of the art in my sketchbook so that my and while and I'm doing it while like visualizing and intending for it. So I'm like putting my intention, my visualization, my thought forms, my art, my creativity, my soul, my heart, and my sweat into this. And then that book of beliefs, I went and shot photography of that, macro photography, and then printed that. There's one right here.
Mm.
Give me just one sec. I'm gonna grab one.
Okay. Okay. So amazing. I love that. It's like, yeah, as you're grabbing the book, as Raphael's grabbing the book, it's like I just picture myself doing that. It's actually reminiscent of meditating in the sun and feeling the heat, the nourishment while I inscribe my journal with thoughts. So it's a similar thought. Okay, we're watching. Great.
For those that aren't able to see it, right, I'm just kind of sharing some of this artwork done through this process.
Love it.
And then 2020 six has already begun with.
That was great. How big of a sheet was that? That's like a poster size thing you just held up. And then
Well, and it's the originals. Well, the original sketchbook is only
right.
yay
Okay.
big, but then I shoot
8 by 11, so
photography. Yeah, then I shoot
yeah.
photography, and then I print that larger,
Love that.
right?
And you showed me what is it? Hexagon? Was that the image of a
Oh,
hexagon?
hexagon, yeah, hexagon's going to be a play a big role
Oh,
in my
nice.
years. Oh,
Okay.
big role.
Okay.
Maybe me and you can have a whole other hexagon
I
conversation.
was gonna say, like, I have countless hexagonal musings of things at certain
Okay.
phases. So
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
Well, in part two, I mean,
Yeah. Part two.
well, and playing around with it as a cube, right? And
Mhm.
hives, and yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
there. Part two,
Totally.
part two.
It's like the building block of life, and yeah, the
Yeah,
honeycomb.
yeah,
And
yeah.
totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have fun with what you saw is just I'm
Okay.
only a week into that book, right? And my
Okay.
other sketchbook is at home, and it's like so thick and full of layers and layers and
Yeah.
layers of just intentions and visions and everything. And so it's like I know, and this is actually I'm bringing this up because what we're teaching in 45 minutes to our class, right? Because someone asked me like, "How are you so confident, and how do you teach confidence?" And I was like, "Well, confidence comes from two places. One is just experience, and
Yeah.
once you've done something a bunch, you become confident. But the second is like really knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Like I'm confident in each foot I plant down because I know exactly what that foot plant is about. I know who I am and what I'm about, And so we're going to be teaching just the art of reflection is what we're
Mm.
going to be writing
Mhm.
and journaling
Yeah.
about, and just knowing if a person would ask themselves, what five things matter to me the most? You'll be darned about how many people out there are like deer in the headlights being asked something like that. I don't know. Well, then maybe it's a good time to start to think about that, right?
Yeah.
How can I have a compass that is tuned to be true when I don't even know what I'm about?
Right.
My goodness gracious.
Yeah. You have to have a North Star to have a
Gotta,
compass attuned to it. So
yeah.
no, that's so good. I could like I was telling while you were going to get that, I was like, for the sake of, kind of talking too, I was like, yours is so robust, and I think it's so good because I'm like, wow, I love your practice. I feel like you might have people listen to this and all go out and do the Raphael
Yeah.
method of integration, but I have like a lot of times, especially when I would put into my day like when I it's like an hour of sunbathing in the middle of my day, in the middle of all the work, and I would just feel the
Yeah.
sun, feel the glow, sweats, journal.
Yeah.
My
There it is.
pages
Yeah.
weren't waterproof, so it would blur them up, but I could see so many pages of that, and maybe it was laughter, or maybe it was crying, and it was those tears that would fall onto the page and alchemize the words to go into my being.
Yeah.
So very
Yeah.
resonant, very parallel, and I feel like no, it's so good. I think it's so good to know. I think some people might love so much of this conversation, and somebody like me, I'm like, ooh, that just gives me even more excitement about that personal craft, personal development. Though, so
We
thanks for
got to
sharing
make
that.
it fun. We got to make it exciting. Follow our excitement.
Yeah,
That is the highest form of animating the energy necessary for these things to come true. Okay, well then let me get excited about it.
yeah,
And that's one thing people say. I do some version of prayer, meditation, visualization, probably almost a couple hours every single morning, and they say, "Wow, I can't sit still for 5 minutes. How do you do it? How do you meditate?" And it's like, make it fun.
yeah. Make it fun.
I'm
Yeah, exactly.
visualizing my fantasies of all the things that I would love to come true, and I'm feeling like they're coming true in the present moment. So then I'm feeling as if it's already happening. That's a good vibe.
Yeah,
That's a good time. Like, and if a person gets that kind of visualization practice down, they will never be bored again.
it's the truth.
If you
It's
ever
the
get
truth.
stuck on a 3 hour layover, you'll see me in the terminal corner with my eyes closed, my hands on my heart, with a big old
Mhm.
smile on my face, nice and easy.
Yeah. Oh, Raphael, I feel like that's a beautiful place to. I mean, I can't wait to part two to have part
Yeah,
two because whether we do
cubes.
part two is just
Yes.
on cubes and hexagons. There you go.
And so many other things, so
So
like the
many other
book
things.
is Fundamental Life Tools. You can find it
Yes.
on Amazon. Our nonprofit is Indivisible Arts, as in cannot be divided, indivisible,
Hmm.
with liberty and justice for all. It's a division sign with an X through it. And we are located in Hermosa Beach. Our headquarters is called Resin. You can find all of those things on Instagram. Our um, website is indivisiblearts.org. And as a 501c3 nonprofit, we rely on the donations of our supporters for us to survive and be able to continue to have a scholarship program that makes it so that in the 9 years we've been around, we've turned away 0 kids, and we don't intend on turning away any kids. So please, we need your support, not only for the local kids here, but go to StreamOfConsciousness.life. You'll be able to see this platform. You'll see the prototype. We're building the true platform this year so that we can roll this out nationally and get these tools to all the kids out there that need them. But we need your support. So please come find us, indivisiblearts.org. You'll see a donate and a support button, and come be part of this mission of being the change that we need to see in the world right now. There's got to be a different way, and we've got a program that works.
Yeah. Powerful. Awesome. Raphael, that's dynamite. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being with me. And I love your energy and I love what you're doing. So I'm excited for people to come into that. And I can't wait to come by the place and connect in person.
Yeah, I will see you there. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I love it.
Yeah. Well, everybody, you're going to find those links in the show notes and reach out to, uh, check out Raphael's pages and yeah, follow his advice. Just kind of, first of all, I can't wait to read the book and just get a group together. But then maybe you all can do that too. Find people and study and learn this, and then we can just share it with more and more. And then also, please comment, like, share what you love about this conversation, what you want to hear the next time we chat. So without further ado, thanks for being on the Compromise to Alchemize podcast, Raphael, and hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Oh yeah, and it's coming up for your class time really soon here, so it's gonna be so good.
Let's go have
So
some fun, baby. Let's go have some fun.
thank you for listening to the Compromise to Alchemize podcast. Really excited to thank Jessica from Lunalux for the music. This track called Major. I want to thank Toshi, who originally did the design work for my cover art. And then I also want to thank Alyssa for my team for podcast publishing, and my whole team, including Kat, for heading up my world. And then also definitely want you all to follow me on YouTube, follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast. Comment, give us a rating, and also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Neil Bulchandani so you can stay tuned to my latest. Thanks so much, and you have an amazing day.
This is major.